Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately termed IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. You can find more about IPA World at ipaworld.org, and they have a world conference coming up in Scotland in June of 2023. And you can find more about IPA-USA at IPA-USA.org. And we have a conference coming up in October of this year. So you want to go to our website to find more about that. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA-USA. And with me on the porch is Sally Haughey. Sally, hi, how are you?
Hey, yes, excited to be
so
here.
Nice to meet you. And so I go to Sally's fairy dust teaching sessions all the time, but I've never actually seen her face to face in a conversation. So I'm so excited. Sally is the CEO and founder of Fairy Dust Teaching. Fairy Dust Teaching is built on the passion for the wonder and magic of early childhood. They believe young children have the right to play, to be collaborators in learning, and to dream. And after 20 years of successfully teaching in various school settings, she has committed herself on what she loves most: empowering and inspiring educators. Her focus is to provide a deeper level of service and training to help educators own their true teaching self. Sally has now worked with over 100,000 educators in the online courses and workshops. So Sally,
Crazy.
So I know this, but think of the impact that you're having. Yeah, I know. It just sends chills all over my body. And so Sally's title today is How Play Develops Executive Function. And so her question is, what's the connection between play and executive function?
Yeah, so I like a really simple analogy or maybe more descriptive illustration of what I mean that you can easily take to a parent or administrator. And if we look at just simply teacher directed versus child directed, and when I say child directed, I mean no population control. I mean, they're going where they want. And then there's the other piece that really makes some people uncomfortable: cross-pollination. So they can use the materials as they wish. And
they can move them from place to place.
That's it. So like, this is crucial. Without this, executive functioning isn't going to happen, because teacher directed, the child is told where to go, told what to play. And if you're theming it, they're underneath your theme, your imagination, right? So executive function is planning. Do they get to plan in teacher directed? Is there any choice? Executive function is choice. Like literally, if you think about a child who's not been on the planet long and they have choice A and choice B, and they want both. It's like, I've been there. That right there is a crucial moment of development. The management of one's own self-regulation. I want this, but I want that too. I choose this. Oh, I chose that. Right. What about, okay, I've chosen this. Now I'm going to plan what I'm going to do. Oh, there's all these other people here. I'm going to have to navigate that. When we go teacher directed, we strip all of that out of the way. What I think is really compelling, what like grabs me, is that executive functioning will not develop on its own.
Right.
It's not like, crawling.
Right.
It must be activated, and play activates it. So then I go, okay, so we have open play, free choice, cross-pollination, or a worksheet. What in executive functioning is being developed by a worksheet other than listening and processing instructions? And come on, people.
Getting bored, right? They can't even hold a pencil well yet. What are you thinking?
Oh, right.
Oh,
like it's such, so I always say this world, teacher directed worksheets are McDonald's. And this is Michelin 5-star. And because when you get the brain research on this, you realize teacher directed is really, really damaging to that growing child. And so one thing I want to put in here, because I'm really committed, like it's kind of a new fire in my belly, that I'm committed to transforming the planet, that play-based education becomes the gold standard. But if I stand there, I don't need to preach to the choir.
Right.
They're already there.
Yeah.
And so for those of you already there, thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
there. Be there. We love you.
We need more of you everywhere.
Hugs everywhere.
Hugs. Yeah.
But what about the educator? And so I worked at Head Start. I worked in public school the longest. In public school, I would have no choice. I might, I used worksheets I had to when the principal walked in, that I was play-based alongside of that. So when, I arranged free choice for 2 hours and allowed full-on free choice. So I wanted just really presence, that it's not either or.
Right.
That even in the deepest constraint, I never had, at all the 3 schools in public school that I worked, not one principal denied me.
Right.
So you have the power to get free play in your classroom, even if you're a kindergarten teacher who's being told they have to be reading when they leave, like I did.
Oh, yes.
And if you're using worksheets, there's no reason to shame yourself. And I'll never shame you.
No.
All I'm going to ask you to do is fight for play. Balance the scales.
Balance the scales. One of the things I do in one of the courses that I teach is a field experience for primary grades, right? So at the community college where I teach, and one of the things I make them do is worksheet adaptations. So they have to bring in a worksheet from their field experience, right? That they're in a kindergarten through 4th grade classroom. They have to bring in a worksheet, and they have to demonstrate how they would take whatever the worksheet is trying to teach children and turn it into a hands-on experience. And when I was a kindergarten teacher, that's what I would do. You had your stupid worksheets, and I would have the worksheet, because that was the concept, right, that they needed to learn. And I would do it in an open-ended way. And the principal would come in and say, why aren't you using the math worksheet? I said, well, I don't need the math worksheet. Here's how they're doing it with hands-on materials. And he would say, oh, and I'd say, so they learn it much better this way than if they're just doing it in a passive way on a worksheet.
Oh,
He'd
my
say,
gosh.
Right. He would say, oh, and so then, later on, he came back to me and he said, why do all the 1st grade teachers want your kids? And I said, well, it could be because I do active learning instead of passive learning. And he was like, well, can you teach other people to do that? And I said, sure. And so then I talked to him about worksheet adaptation. So I do that in my classes, and students go, wow, this is so easy. I said, yeah, it saves trees. It gives children active learning opportunities where they're actually interested. I mean, so if you have to, make it active. You don't have to use the worksheet. You can make it active.
Amen. Amen. And, one of the things, because in different years, different pressures, and one of the years where there was a pressure to have papers going home, there are different things that I did. One is that I adapted the worksheet into a different worksheet, meaning I called it an investigation sheet, and the children are drawing or writing their response to an experience. The other thing I did, and this is what I love most of all, because I'm a rebel.
Me too. Rule breakers, right here.
Rule breakers. I would sit in front of the class and I would say, okay, today the principal and the school board want us to do these things. And I'd show them my teacher's manual and I'd read to them what we had to do. How are we going to do that today? Because I don't want to do this. And we would have a discussion and we would brainstorm ideas on how are we going to do this, science project that we're looking at habitats on a worksheet, but we're not going to do that, and it was amazing that I would say, I think maybe we could do this, and that they would have the right to go, no, Mrs. Haughey, I have a better idea.
Yeah.
and to give them voice in the process, to actually honor them in
Mhm.
sharing my process, not,
Mm.
and then having that discussion. And I'm telling you, on fairy dust, I started fairy dust when I was a kindergarten teacher. And so there are academic things in fairy dust because that's where my setting was. But some of the best ideas were not mine.
Yes.
They were the children.
And go back to executive function, problem solving, collaboration, self-regulation, choice. Oh my goodness. If we just, if we, and the way you framed it was perfect. This is what we have to, this is what I'm supposed to do today. Instead of doing it this way, what are your ideas? How, I think how invested they were and how engaged they were when it was their idea versus something that they were made to do
Well, and I
in
got
a
the
different
feedback.
way.
We don't always get the feedback from families. And I was hungry to experience different settings. So I was in with homeless children. I was with children in poverty. Then I wanted to be with children in wealth. Like I had this hunger to feel education in different settings. And so I didn't get the experience of being in one place and following children, but I had a mother reach out to me not long ago. I left the classroom in 2015, but they were in Texas, in Fort Worth, at a museum. And their son was looking at the painting and sharing his thoughts about it. And, he's high school, really sharing his perspective. And her husband looked at each other and said, where does he get this deep thinking about a painting? And then they both went, Mrs. Haughey. And the thing that I love about that, it wasn't, it could have been any teacher. What I gave the children was the right to think and reflect.
Mhm.
And that when we lay those neural pathways down, he had me in kindergarten, he's now in high school.
Mhm.
It's still there.
It's still there because it was formed so early in those formative years when the brain is so eager in making all those synaptic connections. And so if we think about our role as facilitators or observers, instead of always having to think of it as an educator, I think that changes our perception. We don't have to teach, we have to facilitate, right? And then that's a whole nother conversation, right? What does that look like? Is it interrupting them? Wendy and I, in a former Porch Play Chat, we're just talking about this, where our need to ask open-ended questions because someone told us we have to do 4 open-ended questions an hour, right? And how that is, she called it hijacking play. Yeah. And so I think we're so confused. I think sometimes we're fearful to push the envelope a little. I think sometimes we want to be seen as a professional who should be respected. And so we feel like we have to take on that persona of the teachers that we had instead of the teachers we always wanted.
I think so. This is really juicy stuff. This is really important. So I love Seth Godin. He's like, I've done all MBA, I've gone into his work. He's a marketer he calls it permission marketing, but he also has a huge stand on education, and his way of talking about it is not new. I've heard other people say this, but his spin on it changed my life. He said, we're in this factory model, and this is where it gets really juicy. He says, the educators, the children are coming through, right? And we're pouring outcome into them. And so the children are in that factory line, outcome based. And what's most important is obedience and compliance. That is like number one, the system's devised to create obedient compliance. But what he pointed to was we're, as educators, in the same shackles of being, a good teacher is a quiet classroom.
Oh,
a good teacher is so organized. If you say, I need a piece of wine, they're like, I know exactly where it is. Let me go get it. Here you go. The children, you say, pick up. They're like, yes, I'll pick up. I love you so much, teacher. This insane view. And then he points to something even more profound to me, that the parents, if their child is not compliant and obedient, it's again, shame. So it's a system filled with shame.
It is.
And
We just stomp on their creativity and curiosity, because that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about this, right? And you're so right. And there's this one, who is it, Sir? Somebody.
Ken Robinson.
Yes, thank you. Who does that
him.
Wonderful video on the factory of the, I show it every semester in my classes. And we talk about what are we doing and how did we get so far off track, right?
Exactly. And I think what's really important for educators that I'll never forget, I think for some reason, kindergarten was the transformation for me, because it had the pressure of the higher, being in Head Start didn't have the same, it had pressure, but not the same pressure. Right. Being in a private school had a pressure, but not the same pressure. When I was in kindergarten, everybody had the expectation of academic learning. And I remember one time early on in like my first year, I had given them in the afternoon, they had 2 hours of free play. And I forget who coined it, play residue was everywhere. I love that term, play residue everywhere. everywhere. And it was, a nice hum. And I got scared. Like I could feel the fear in me. Like, I need to shut them down. I need to get them quiet. I need to get them cleaning up. What is going on? Because I'm the only one in all of these educators that is, they had play too. All of them provided play, but it was in a different mindset, not with that child openness. And I was terrified. And I was like, why am I terrified? Why, I'm a rebel, but I'm like scared. And I was, okay, it's the expectation. What's a good teacher? Quiet. What's a good teacher? And like you said, the brain research shows us if we buy into the factory model, we're doing, it's like, again, feeding junk food to children every single day.
It is.
So I think we have to be aware to go, okay, I feel this way. I'm nervous because I was indoctrinated. This is the only world I know. I'm standing in an unknown world. It's scary.
It's scary. I think what you just said about that whole fear thing, I think if we recognize that when we're in the factory model, we are harming children. If we just do that, if we just say, that's not how children learn. So I need to find a way to navigate, using my executive function as an adult, I need to find a way to navigate my way into something that can be meaningful and relevant to children and still have me keep my job, right?
Exactly.
Because I need to pay my bills. And so again, I think we are smart enough as educated folks to be able to figure out what that balance is. Before the principal came in and asked me about why aren't you using the worksheet, the other thing that he came in and asked me about when he said, why do all the first grade teachers want your kindergarten children? When I had first started, I was setting up my classroom, and the first year there, he comes in with this god awful curriculum book, all shrink wrapped and everything. He said, here's your kindergarten curriculum. And I said, thank you very much. And I went, after he left, put it in the closet in the very far back and never looked at it. And so it was like 2 years of teaching where I never opened the curriculum book. And he walks in the door, and this was after the worksheet thing. He says, why do all the teachers want your kids? I asked you this before, and you said it was about how you do these worksheets. And I said, you have to promise not to be mad. He said, what do you mean? Why would I be mad? You have to promise not to be mad. And he said, well, why would you have to promise not to be mad? And so finally he said, okay, I won't be mad. I go over to my closet, I dig out, all the stuff teachers have in their closet. I go into the very back and I pull out the shrink wrapped curriculum book and I put it on the table. He said, that's the curriculum I gave you 2 years ago. I said, yes, it is. He said, you've never opened it? I said, those people don't know my children. And he said, can you teach other people how to do that? But it was, so sometimes you have to, changes happen when people refuse to do things that they know aren't right, right? So, I mean, that's where the civil rights movement came from. That's where the LGBTQ movement has come from. And so sometimes we have to push back a little, and you need to do it in a way that you can keep your job. But
well, I think it's so important to transform these institutions. And one thing you're really pointing to that I love so much is that, well, for parents, for my kindergarten class, I did not do like other educators. Here's my favorite story is they brought me this huge stack, first day of school, my first year there, this huge stack of worksheets. I said, wow, you guys did the whole year at once? They said, no, that's the first 2 weeks of school. I was like, what? So I told the parents at back to school night, I said, you're going to see, because there were 8 other educators classes. This was a big school. I said, you're going to see other children that your child plays with bringing home big stacks. And I want you to know you're going to see some, but you're going to see more. When we talk about habitats, they're going to create habitats. When we're going to do this, and I explained exactly what we were going to be up to. I said, they may not progress at the same rate academically as their peers until after Christmas, because we're going to focus on relationships first. And I promise you, if you trust me, you're going to see them catapult, and the testing will show it.
Yeah.
And it did. But I had to warn them. So in the years I was there, I never had a complaint. I never had a problem with my colleagues. I mean, and here's the other thing I have to say, just this is an organic conversation. Those other 8 educators in that school were amazing human beings. One of my favorite places I ever worked, like that, I never felt backbiting. I felt supported, and they were worksheet meals, and they did hands-on, but that every educator is doing what they think is best. If they're not play-based, they haven't seen the evidence. They don't know. And I'm not going to shame them or put them down. And I'll tell you a brutal truth. If I look at the most beautiful Reggio Emilia classroom that someone's attempting to do, we're not talking in Reggio Emilia, but someone is striving to be that, in a traditional kindergarten classroom, what would have me choose from my grandsons is the heart of the educator and how they honor the child, because that can happen anywhere.
It can. And it's the relationship, right?
It's the relationship. And we can't forget the core. Like we can get so dogmatic, and it drives me nuts. And I tell people, and they like in my certification, and they come in, I'll say, I'll never shame you. I'm committed to transforming your view, but you be you. And if you honor children, you give them voice. I'm 100% behind you at whatever you're in right now.
And you can have different beliefs.
Absolutely.
It's the relationships and the opportunity for children to be who they are.
Yes.
That I think is what we have to focus on. And the reason why we do these things that are not appropriate, right? I've forgotten the developmentally appropriate word, because I don't think it means what it should mean anymore. But if we focus on this child and this child and this child and this child, and we build that strong relationship, think of the executive functioning that they're creating, because they know that they're in a loving place that trusts them to make good decisions, that is there to support them when maybe their decision wasn't so great, and we're going to talk about it. But it's the environment that we set. Wendy was talking about, had gone through, she went through a series of Angie play
Yes,
sessions
love
with
it.
the Angie Play folks who we love, right?
Amazing stuff. Oh my
And
gosh.
she said one of the things, and she's a play-based person. She said, but one of the things that I found that was so amazing is as we are videotaping children and we're uploading those so that each of the people in this course can view them and notice what's happening. She said, when I watched that video 2 or 3 times, I found 25 more things that was happening. If we honor the child and we respect who the child is, and then, we talked about tying in those observations with learning stories so that you're not creating an activity to meet the stupid standards, that you're allowing children this free investigation time and videotaping it and then aligning it with the standards is a much different approach than let me have this little checklist and see where you are developmentally. So, I think, oh my God, we could go on for 100 hours.
Well, and I think the other thing I just have to point out here, because there's so much of the brain research that we could talk about, but one really important one, when Johnny keeps going to blocks day after day after day, and teachers like, you gotta stop, that is building the executive functioning of attention and focus.
Yes.
That the neural pathways are being burned. Like the way it happened is over and over and over again. It is one of the healthiest signs ever. We want all the children doing repetitive play. Come
We
on.
do.
Like if by choice.
By choice. Yes. Oh, thank you.
It's
By choice. And that's Bruce Perry's learning cycle, right? So it's that repetition. It's like halfway down. And it's really interesting. I've done sessions with principals and superintendents on what early childhood looks like prenatally all the way through the 4th grade in Pennsylvania, right? And, I'll show them pictures of classrooms who are orderly and, really organized. And I'll show them pictures of classrooms where children are playing. And I'll say, which one do you want to see and why? And so they have to go and talk about it. And then I'll say, if you want children to learn these standards and these standards and these standards, because they're so standards based, how would you want to see that happen in your classrooms? And they are always saying open-ended, child-initiated, active learning. And I'll say, is that what you're seeing in your classrooms? And they'll say, no. Why is that?
Yes.
Why is that?
Yes.
Is that because you're not communicating that you'd like to see children being active? Are they fearful of being active? Why is that? And boy, they go, oh, yeah, maybe we're not communicating what it is that we want to see. And so then I give them those dispositions of learning, that learning cycle from Bruce Perry. And I'll say, throw away those observation things you're using and take these into your classroom and see how many times they go through a learning cycle without interruption.
And that's good.
That's when learning is happening. And so, sometimes they just need tools, right? They just, they're in that same mindset, the factory model, but that's not really what they want. But they just need some tools to be able to reflect
and
on what it is they want.
Because I think it's subconscious. I think it's because I felt it, the subconscious, like it's what I experienced for my educational journey. And I until college, and I had some professors who blew open the gates for me. And I have auditory dyslexia. So they're like complicated names or words, like my beloved John was trying to tell me how to say a word and he kept saying it and I kept saying it wrong. So school was brutal. I did not have it failed me miserably. So, to find a place where my ideas were honored, even if I couldn't articulate it. Was huge. Was huge. And I think how many children, because of this outcome based, are losing the opportunity to find a fulfilled life.
Yes. And they're feeling like failures. Because they can't get it the way it's being taught, instead of allowing it to be organic and following their lead instead of expecting them to follow ours. And even in first grade and second grade and third grade. Yes, you can have,
I
the
taught first
content.
grade. Yeah.
Hello, you can do it. You can do it. We can help you.
In fact, first grade was shockingly amazing that like I gave them the open, again, that openness to move. And I remember one time, this just cracked me up. We were talking, I'm in Oklahoma and Native American history is really important. My own ancestors did the Trail of Tears. I'm,
Mhm,
along with a gazillion other people, Cherokee.
mhm.
But we had this program and I came back and said to the children, create whatever you're inspired to create.
Mhm.
It was the most shockingly amazing thing.
Mhm.
They built a river, the class collaborating from one end of the room to the other with all these scenes of mountains, because I teach paper craft to the children so they can create 3D. So it was this 3D construction from one end to the other. All the children are involved and a tour happens and they walk into my classroom. Talk about chaos. It was one of those things like I wanted to go, you're witnessing one of the most amazing things you've ever seen, yet you probably don't realize it.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
unification of creation. But that's
Mhm.
what's possible when you give children freedom. It's so they can express their own individuality, their own likes and dislikes. They can engage, then the engagement with others. And you welcome like upsets and conflict are glory in the classroom.
Glory.
They're the most beautiful thing because you actually get to facilitate, being seen, heard, and valued, not agreeing, not say sorry, but actually, and you probably know this, I get so passionate about when children just have the opportunity to say they're upset, it disappears.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
complete.
Just like with us, right? Don't
Yes.
ignore me. Pay attention.
Right.
I need your attention and I need to voice how I feel. It's amazing.
It's amazing. And when they know that's there, then this working like, and this is the part that gives me goosebumps. When children have that safety, they know they're seen, they know they're valued, spontaneous collaboration rises like the sun, natural.
Yeah.
You don't like it, all of a sudden they don't need you anymore.
And isn't that the most beautiful thing?
Oh my gosh, I
And
live for
sometimes,
that.
well, I know, oh, please let this happen quickly, right? Because, I'm busy because I'm
Yes,
trying to observe children. I'm busy.
100%.
I think what people sometimes, I get frustrated when the focus is on cognitive development and not on the essential skills of self-regulation and executive function. That's what's going to carry them through life.
The research has shown it. It's the predictor of academic success.
Of course it is.
Not the worksheets and your ABCs
No.
or phonics or whatever.
Whatever it is, if we can just get that executive function practice in the classroom, repetition, so that they really strengthen those neural pathways, then it is amazing what human beings they become who can resolve conflicts, who can problem solve, who can focus, who can not be as easily distracted as we sometimes see children are these days because we're bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong with them all the time. Oh, Sally, we have to do like 25 more of these because this was
Yes.
amazing.
Oh my God, I love it. I want to always talk shop.
We can do it. I'll send you another invitation. So don't go anywhere. Let me close this out and then don't go anywhere. So, hold on. So to learn more about IPA-USA, please visit our website at IPA-USA.org. Remember, there's over 100 Porch Play Chats available for you free on the IPA website, on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page. So you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and the Facebook page on our website up in that top right-hand corner, and magically every Monday a new Porch Play Chat will appear. So please do that so that you can hear more of our wonderful speakers on the Porch Play Chats. So until next time, keep on playing.